So we probably have read today one of the most familiar passages in Scripture that we're all aware of. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So I have an easy question. Who's your enemy? Who's your enemy? As a child, we knew exactly who our enemies were. It was the Russians. In fact, so much so that I still remember the bombing drills. We had to do drills in case there was an atomic attack. And they would take us out in the hallway and we would kneel in front of a block wall, and we had to shield our eyes in case of the nuclear flash so we wouldn't be blinded. As an adult, I realized how silly that was, because if we could see the nuclear flash, standing in front of a wall was not going to protect us. Today, it's not so simple. Are the Russians our friends or our enemies? Who are our friends or enemies? It's all kind of mixed up now, isn't it? It used to be very clear, black and white. Well, Jesus makes it easy for us. He says, love everybody. Love everybody. It's not about loving the people you like and not loving these people. It's about loving everybody. Now, sometimes the tendency is to say, well, this seems to be a weakness. To be meek and to be humble like a lamb. Not exactly. Loving your enemy is hard. Loving your enemy takes courage. He says, if you're struck on one cheek, offer your other cheek. And that's not a passive response. Think about that. Passive response would be to run away. We are called to stand not in weakness or in aggression, but we're told to stand in this place of, shall I call it, passive resistance. Mother Teresa, famous story, was trying to get some food for a child. And she took the child by the hand and took her to a baker. Took the child to a baker. And she's standing outside the door, and the baker comes out, and she said, could I have some bread for this child? And the baker spit full into her face. And she looked at him and she said, thank you for that. May I now have something for the child? The great Bishop Desmond Tutu, back during the time when what was going on in South Africa was horrible, apartheid. And Desmond was walking down it had rained, and he was walking down this wooden sidewalk, and this big, gruff man coming the other way said, step off. I don't step aside for gorillas. And Desmond Tutu looked at him and smiled. And if you know Desmond Tutu, you know what that big smile was like. He looked at the man and smiled and said, that's okay, I do. And he stepped off the sidewalk. Those aren't being weak or being passive. Those are meeting hostility with a kind of aggressive love. And that's what we're called to do today. Now, simple question. Is what we're doing in the world now working? No, not by a long shot. And I don't mean us, I mean the world. Is what the world doing now working? We're becoming more and more torn apart. We're becoming more and more aggressive toward each other. We're becoming more and more angry at each other. All we have to do is watch TV or be on Facebook or any of those places, and we see this constant aggression. My brothers and sisters, we're called to love each other, but with kind of a tough and active love. A love that is not a weakness, but a love that recognizes us that in the end, we are all children of Christ. We were all created by God. And we're called to love one another, even when it's not easy. But on the other hand, isn't it a whole lot easier just to love everybody than to try to pick and choose?